Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
I've heard many stories about cheating spouses, both husbands and wives. Every person reacts differently when they find out their partner has been unfaithful, but in most cases, you might expect the husband to lose his temper and take some sort of action if he finds another man in bed with his wife. I've read a few stories where the husband comes home early, only to spot an unfamiliar car in the driveway. He quietly enters the house, hears sounds coming from the bedroom, and finds the door slightly ajar. Peeking inside, he sees his wife with another man, and she's calling out for more. The husband, feeling sick to his stomach and overwhelmed, doesn't know how to react. So, instead of confronting the situation, he quietly leaves the house, goes to a bar to think things over, and drinks a pint of Jim Beam. Later, he returns home as if nothing happened and starts thinking about some sort of revenge. Now, I'm not attacking the writers or authors of these stories, but to me, this kind of behavior seems weak. These men, in my view, are letting someone else take advantage of their wife while they stand by and do nothing. Instead of acting decisively, they try to ignore the situation, perhaps to protect their marriage or avoid facing the painful truth. But is this what real men do? I don't think so. Let me tell you about my experience. Laura and I had been married for 11 years, and we had 2 children, Trevor, who was 10, and Jasmine, who was 8. Like most marriages, we thought we had a good thing going. In the early years, we were very active in our physical relationship, trying different things, some of them great, others not so much. But we both put effort into it. Laura's favorite was being on top, and I didn't mind that at all. However, as time went on, things started to change. We got ourselves into a lot of debt, which we were both responsible for. We wanted the things our parents had, but we wanted them right away, not understanding the time it took for them to achieve it. It wasn't just Laura spending money. I also wanted new gadgets and appliances, like a big screen TV. With my work at the factory, I was putting in long hours, but the pay wasn't enough to cover our growing debts. Laura suggested she could get a job to help with the finances, and I agreed, even though I felt guilty. It wasn't ideal, but it was necessary. She took a job at a local department store, which didn't pay much, but it helped. With her working, we didn't see each other as much as we used to, and the intimacy between us became less frequent. She said it was because of the kids and her work, and I understood, but it was hard. We argued about money, and eventually, the arguments shifted to housework. Laura felt I wasn't doing enough, and when I tried to pitch in, it was never done right or the way she wanted. The lack of intimacy felt like punishment. In response, I started going to the bar more often. I was angry and tired of being alone. The kids would go to their grandparents' house, and I would go to the bar to kill time. I met a few women there, but I didn't do anything beyond talking to them. I bought them a few drinks, and word of this reached Laura. She was furious, and it led to a confrontation where she said if I was going to cheat, she could do the same. I denied it, of course, and told her whoever told her that was lying. She didn't tell me who had said it, but she went to bed, locking herself away from me. I was tempted to break the door down, but then thought about the mess and the cost of fixing it. I thought things would eventually calm down, so I ended up sleeping on the couch. We were at a point where we just couldn't get along anymore. We argued about the smallest things, and it seemed like every conversation ended in a threat of divorce. Our kids were spending more time with Laura's parents, likely because they couldn't stand seeing us fight. On Friday, I told Laura I was taking Saturday off to go fishing. She was furious, saying, "We need money, and you're taking the day off? What's wrong with you?" Another argument ensued, and she accused me of planning to take a woman from the bar with me. I didn't know where she got that idea, but I denied it. I admitted that over the past few weeks, a woman from the bar had been flirting with me. I enjoyed the attention, but didn't do anything more than talk to her. One time, she even grabbed my hand, but I stopped her, explaining that although Laura and I had issues, I wouldn't cheat on her. The next morning, I went fishing to clear my head. I spent about 4 hours walking, and by the time I came back, I felt I had sorted things out in my mind. I realized that Laura and I had been acting foolish, arguing without resolution. I decided it was time to go home and sit down like adults to figure things out. But when I pulled into the driveway, there was a strange car there. My heart sank, and I immediately thought of those cases where the husband catches his wife cheating and just stands by helplessly. I crept inside, listening for sounds. I could hear Laura saying, "Victor, this isn't right. Even if Warren is cheating on me." I peeked into the room and saw her with Victor, his hand on her chest, her blouse unbuttoned. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I walked into the room, and Laura panicked, shouting, "Warren, what are you doing here?" I grabbed Victor by the arm and yanked him off the couch. His pants were undone, and I hit him hard in the stomach, then threw a punch to his jaw. I think I may have dislocated it. I tossed him across the room, knocking over a table and a lamp. I jumped on him, throwing punch after punch. As he lay there, I kicked him in the groin. Laura was screaming at me to stop, but I wasn't done. I pulled Victor outside and threw him onto the lawn, then grabbed Laura and threw her out too. Her breasts were still exposed, but I slammed the door and locked it. She screamed for me to let her back in, to talk things over and call an ambulance for Victor, but I ignored her. A few minutes later, a patrol car and an ambulance showed up. The officers told me to open the door, or they would break it down. I complied, and they rushed in. They ordered me to lie face down, handcuffed me, and took me to the police car. Victor was unconscious and being taken to the hospital. Laura straightened her clothes and put her bra back on. The officers spoke to her first, then to me. I refused to say anything, and they read me my rights. I didn't say a word. I was taken to jail, and Laura came to visit, calling me, but I told the officers I didn't want to speak with her. A friendly officer named Joe came by to talk to me. He asked, "What happened, Warren?" I replied, "Lack of communication, plain and simple. My wife was about to sleep with another man in my house, and I wasn't going to stand for it. No one forced her to do it. She was doing it willingly." Joe asked if I heard her side of the story, but I didn't care. I told him, "I did what I had to do, and now I guess I'll pay for it." I refused to waste any money on bail, telling the officers that if I was going to be stuck in this mess, I might as well cool off. Later, my lawyer came to see me and told me I was in serious trouble. He suggested pleading insanity, but I laughed. I knew exactly what I was doing. I warned him, if Laura or anyone like that ever comes near me again, they'll get a repeat performance. I asked my lawyer if I had killed him, and he told me I came damn close. Victor had a broken jaw, 2 fractured ribs, 2 black eyes, and God knows what else. The police couldn't even take his statement since he was in no condition to speak. All they had was Laura's version of events. My lawyer told me he was going to visit her the next day, and I told him to let her know she was free to be with anyone she wanted, and that I wanted a divorce. I had become incredibly stubborn. In prison, you learn to be tough, and I refused to speak to Laura. I did receive a few messages from the kids, saying they missed me and wanted me to come home, but it wasn't as simple as just walking back through the door. 2 months passed since the incident, and my trial was about to start. There were no other witnesses besides Laura and Victor, who worked at the same place as her. I was sitting in the courtroom when they wheeled Victor in, still in a wheelchair. I think I broke his leg when I threw him out the door. His jaw was still bandaged, but the bruises had mostly healed. My lawyer whispered to me that they had to surgically remove his testicles because they had been damaged too badly. Victor was married, but his wife was divorcing him because of what had happened. He could barely speak because of the brace on his jaw, and his written statements were hard to read. I glanced at the door and saw Laura standing there. I felt a mixture of anger and hurt when I saw her. She had to testify as a reluctant witness, though she didn't have to speak against me. Still, she had to share her account of the events. I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it, but it was coming. Victor was called to the stand first. He claimed that Laura had invited him over, and that they were getting intimate when I burst in and started attacking him. He said he and Laura were 2 consenting adults, and that I didn't give him a chance to explain before I started hitting him. His version of events made me want to stand up and slap him again, but I held back. When Laura was called to testify, she looked at me with anger in her eyes, tears streaming down her face. She explained that Victor had been flirting with her for a while, but she had always rejected him. She said that when Victor told her I was cheating on her, she didn't believe it. Then, Victor showed her pictures of me with my hand on another woman's bottom, and it all clicked. I realized that Victor had been hanging around outside Jake's bar, spying on me. He was taking pictures to use against me. Laura told the court that after learning about the supposed affair, she became upset and confused. Victor suggested she get even, and she told him about me going fishing that Saturday. She said she was hurt and embarrassed, and when Victor showed up at her door, she let him in. She remembered that Victor started flirting with her and, before she knew it, was undoing her blouse and pulling down her bra. She said she didn't want to be with him, but she let him touch her anyway. Laura's testimony was heartbreaking. She said that, at the time, she felt abandoned by me and was desperate for some form of attention. She knew what she was doing was wrong, but didn't stop it. Then, I walked in and caught them. She claimed she was terrified I would kill Victor and that she screamed at me to stop, but I was beyond reason. She remembered me throwing Victor out the door, calling her names, and throwing her out too. The police and ambulance arrived shortly after, and Laura broke down in tears on the stand. I tried to reach out to her afterward, but she couldn't get through to me. I was so foolish. When Laura got off the stand, She looked at me in tears. I felt so conflicted. According to her, they hadn't done anything like this before, and there was a chance she wouldn't have gone through with it. I knew she was in pain, but there was nothing I could do but watch as everything fell apart. My statement during the trial was a huge mistake, as I told the court I'd do it again if I had the chance. After everything was said and done, I was charged with assault and battery. The judge explained that even though it happened in my home, Victor was a guest, and legally, I could have asked him to leave but couldn't have beaten him the way I did. The sentence was 4 years. Laura left the courtroom in tears, and I never spoke to her. One day, sitting in my cell, I decided to write her a letter. I had things I needed to say. Dear Laura, I still love you, and I always have. I never cheated on you. If you ask Ellen at the bar, she'll tell you the truth. I'll have my lawyer send you the divorce papers. You're too beautiful a woman to be alone. We made a lot of mistakes that I'll always regret. If we'd communicated more, maybe this wouldn't have happened. I wish I could have done more. I should have, but now it's too late. Tell Trevor and Jasmine I love them. It's a shame their father's a criminal. I couldn't stand by and let it happen. My only regret is that you didn't believe me and decided to get revenge instead of talking to me. I hope you find someone else. Please move on and forget about me. You deserve happiness. Always loving you, Warren. I sent off the divorce papers and gave all our possessions to Laura. I didn't need anything anymore. I spent my time trying to better myself, enrolling in rehab programs. I didn't have many skills beyond labor, but I started a welding program. At least when I got out, I could probably get a job and build a future. A couple of months later, the cell officer told me I had a visitor. I assumed it was a lawyer with the divorce papers. The visitation room I was sent to had a table, minimal touching allowed. When I entered, I saw Laura sitting at the table. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. Hey, Laura, what brings you here? I asked, trying to hold it together. I don't want a divorce, she said. I'll wait for you, as long as it takes. I don't want anyone but you. I made a terrible mistake not believing you. It'll never happen again. I know you may not believe me, but I don't think I went any further than I did. I felt so guilty. I was almost glad when you walked in. Our lives are a mess because of both of us. I take half the blame for being so stupid and not trusting you. She paused, then added, I met this woman who told me she really cared for you, and I tried to be affectionate with her, but you told her you were happily married and wouldn't cheat on me. I told her about Victor and the pictures, and she got really mad. In fact, she said she had to kill him. I asked her about the kids, and she told me they were doing as well as could be expected. They couldn't afford the house anymore, so they were selling it. They moved in with her parents until they got back on their feet. The house was closing next week, and she put all our belongings into storage for me. I miss you so much. I can't live without you. I love you, Warren, she said through her tears. I replied, I miss you too, but you need to get on with your life. I can't expect you to wait for me for another 3 years or so. She looked at me and said, I'm not getting a divorce. I'll wait for you. If you still want a divorce when you get out, I'll sign the papers, but not before. We talked for a while longer. Then I asked the officer's permission to kiss her goodbye. We shared a tender kiss, and tears streamed down her face as she told me she would come see me every month. I told her not to visit that often. It would be too painful, but she agreed to come about once every 3 months. Life in prison went on. I received letters from my kids each month, telling me what they were up to, sometimes with pictures. I kept one of them, a photo of the kids with their smiling mother, on the wall in my cell. I was doing well with welding, and the instructor even offered to give me a job reference when I got out. Laura continued visiting every 3 months, updating me on her life. She had changed jobs and was working as a department manager with a slightly higher salary. Laura's parents had been supportive, letting her save most of the money to help her get back on her feet. I asked her what they thought of me now, given my criminal record. She replied, Mom and Dad still love you, Warren. They know you acted out of anger. They were really upset with me for being so foolish. They said I was throwing away a good husband because we didn't communicate enough. In fact, when the divorce papers arrived, they told me, What are you going to do with them? Then I tore them up in front of them, and they smiled. 6 months later, I had another visitor. This time, they wanted to see me at the glass display case instead of sitting at a table. I had no idea who it could be. I walked over to the window and saw Victor, holding the receiver. What do you want, you son of a? I started. He interrupted. I thought I should let you know I'm going through with it. What the hell are you talking about? I asked. Your wife's sex work, that's what I started, and now I'm going to finish it. You know we're dating, right? He said. You're lying, bastard. I shot back. When I get out of here, I'm going to finish what I started. I might even take pictures of me with your wife and send them to you. You can hang them in your cell." He laughed. "I'll find you and kill you, you son of a—" I replied, "I won't be here by then. See you, Victor." He hung up, still laughing. Damn it. Things were going well, and now this bastard was back. I was sure Laura wasn't seeing him, but I needed to warn her. I finally got to the phone and called Laura. I could only make calls if I paid, and I hoped she would accept it. Trevor picked up. "Hey, Dad, how are you?" he asked. "It's good to hear your voice. I miss you." "I miss you too, Trevor," I said, "but I need to talk to your mom. Is she there?" "Yeah, she's here," he replied. "Mom, Dad needs you on the phone." Laura answered, and I immediately asked, "Have you talked to Victor lately?" "No. I can't stand the bastard after everything he's done." "What's wrong, Warren?" she asked, sensing something was urgent. "He showed up here a while ago," I said. "He told me you two are dating, but it's a lie. He's going to try to get revenge. He's going to try to sleep with you." Laura's voice shook. "I'll never let that happen, Warren. I'd rather die than let him near me. I'll be fine. You taught me how to take care of myself. The police won't help unless something happens, but I'll be careful. I love you, Laura," I said before hanging up. It was all I could do. A week later, I was visited by two officers from the sheriff's office. Lieutenant Winslow and Officer Derrick came to my table. "Do you know anything about Victor Medley's death?" the lieutenant asked. "He was shot outside a bar 3 days ago." "Look, I don't own a gun, and Laura wouldn't let one in the house," I said, irritated. "Victor came here last week, probably to rub it in that I'm locked up and he's free. He came to taunt me. I don't care about him." "Good riddance." "Well, anyone else who might have a grudge against him?" the lieutenant asked. "Who cares? He's dead," I said. "Laura doesn't have it in her to kill someone. She's got kids to raise and lives with her parents now. She's got enough on her plate without having to kill someone." The lieutenant paused. "You're right. We think Victor was shot by a woman he met at Jake's bar, but we don't have proof." I shrugged. "I don't care who did it. If it was her, good for her." Later, the officers left, and I thought about calling Laura to tell her not to worry anymore. I didn't want anyone listening to my calls, so I kept quiet. The incident was reported in the paper, and though they mentioned my name, they knew I was locked up at the time. The following week, it was time for Laura's next visit. I was overjoyed to see her when she arrived. She asked if I had heard about Victor, and I shared that the police had visited me. She told me they had also spoken to her, confirming her alibi with her parents, who could vouch for her arrival time. When she mentioned that they had asked about guns, I confirmed we didn't keep any in the house. "Where's my Luger?" I asked. "It's probably in storage with the rest of your things," she replied. The important thing, she added, was that I was safe. Being in prison had given me a lot of time to reflect, and when I got out, I asked her if we could leave the past behind and start fresh. She smiled, saying, "I know we can. No more secrets, just more communication." I love you, Warren. I always have and always will. 2 months later, I was called to the warden's office, where I was told I'd be released early, just 2 weeks away. I could hardly contain my excitement. I called Laura, asking, "Honey, can you pick me up in 2 weeks?" She was overjoyed, crying on the phone. "Oh my God. Oh my God. When? What day? What time? I'm so happy." 2 weeks later, Laura came to pick me up. She had a new car and looked beautiful. She kissed me, tears streaming down her face, and we drove to her parents' house. They had a sign out saying, "Welcome home, Daddy." The kids looked so grown up, and I hugged them tightly. After the small celebration, we headed to our room, and Laura said, "Honey, where do you want to sleep?" I replied, "In our bed, silly." She smiled and added, "We moved it downstairs for privacy. But tonight, we're going to a motel. I've got 3 years of love saved up for you." After the party had wound down, we said our goodbyes, knowing everyone knew where we were going and what we were planning to do. I looked in the closet for my clothes and found a blonde wig there. Laura smiled when she saw me holding it and said, "I wore it once. I think I look better as a brunette." She pointed to the drawers with my clothes, and I pulled out a fresh set to take with me. At the motel, we decided to have a drink together. While I was getting our drinks, I overheard a man talking to Laura. "Hey, babe, are you here alone?" he asked. Laura politely told him, "Please go away. I'm married and waiting for my husband," but he wouldn't listen. "Damn, baby, why would I be afraid of your old man?" he replied. Laura called out, "Warren, honey, come here." The man glanced at me and then quickly excused himself, running out the door. I laughed and asked Laura, "What the hell was that about?" She grinned. You're a legend around here. When any man hears I'm married to you, they leave me alone. People still think you're responsible for Victor's death. We went up to our room, and Laura asked how I wanted things to go. I told her I wanted quick, passionate sex first to release the tension, and then we'd slow it down for some intimate lovemaking. She undressed, and I followed her, both of us eager. Afterward, as she got up to clean herself in the bathroom, I poured us drinks. When she came out wrapped in a towel, I handed her a drink and said, "A toast to the woman I love. May we always be together." We both took a sip, and I pulled the towel off her, sitting her on the bed. A satisfied smile spread across her face as we shared the moment. "I love you so much, Warren," Laura said. "I think that might be enough for the first 6 months." She smiled at me. "That still leaves us with 2.5 years to spare." I grinned back. In the weeks that followed, I found a job as a welder for a large firm. The man who hired me mentioned they were big on giving second chances, as long as the employees showed up on time, worked hard, and stayed clean. He also said I came highly recommended, though he never mentioned by whom. A few months later, we managed to rent our own house. It was a lease with an option to buy, located in the same neighborhood as Laura's parents. We were finally going to be a family again. One day, as we walked up to the warehouse building where I worked, we were met by Lieutenant Winslow and Officer Derrick, along with 2 other officers. They had a warrant to search the warehouse, and I immediately knew they were after the Luger. As they went through the boxes, I tried to catch Laura's attention, but they separated us. Moments later, one of the officers came out holding the Luger. He placed it in a plastic bag and handed it to the lieutenant, who walked up to Laura. "I thought you didn't allow guns in your house, Mrs. Blake," he said. Laura calmly replied, "The warehouse building is not my home, Lieutenant." The officer suggested she stay close to home until they tested the gun. After they left, I went to Laura's and said, "I thought you'd gotten rid of that gun by now. God, what are we going to do now?" Laura looked at me in confusion. "Do what? Oh my God. You think I killed Victor? I didn't do it, Warren. I don't know who did, but it wasn't me." I hadn't thought about the gun until she reminded me of it. The next day, the lieutenant came to our new house. He even returned the Luger, explaining that the serial number had been wiped off, and it didn't even have a striker. It wasn't illegal to own, but it was practically useless. He added that it likely hadn't been fired in years. Laura had told him to keep it or dispose of it, as she didn't allow firearms in the house. She even wondered if it had been left there by one of the movers. The only thing she knew was that it wasn't hers. After this bizarre turn of events, our lives mostly returned to normal. The biggest lesson I learned was the importance of always communicating better with Laura. She admitted that everything had started because she didn't trust me. I could have divorced her, but we both would have lost so much time. Our sex life was as passionate as when we first married. The one thing she knew for sure was that I wouldn't cheat on her, and she also knew what would happen if she ever cheated on me. It's funny. Whenever we go out with friends, they always ask if they can dance with Laura. I think I'll be a bit of a legend in our small town for a while. About a month ago, we got a call from the lieutenant. He told us we were no longer under surveillance in connection with Victor's murder. It turned out the killer was Ellen, the woman from the bar. Victor had been involved with her, and she was a psycho, a black widow. She had a history of seducing men, then killing them when she was done with them. The police had been investigating a case of a cheating wife and went to a bar to talk to the husband. There, they found Ellen with another man. When they checked her car, they discovered a blonde wig and a Luger in the trunk. Ellen eventually confessed to shooting Victor and 3 other unsolved murders, all of which were husbands who had cheated on their wives. The first murder had happened in Atlanta, where her husband's body was found behind a bar. As I processed this, it hit me. If I had cheated on Laura, I might be lying in an alley somewhere right now. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.